Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural episode of Connecting the Commonwealth. We've got Brian Ramsey, my business partner here, and then our first guest ever on the show, super special, right? Matt Monteiro with Bulletproof Finance. So Matt, thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, so since this is the first episode, I just want to run down a little bit about what this show is about. The goal is, when we roll this podcast series, is to talk to local business owners and get an idea of how kind of their life and their story shaped kind of what their business is and who they are as a business person today. And, you know, talk about some functional business stuff too. But this podcast series is always going to be about our guests. You know, we're going to focus the entire conversation on getting to know our guests and telling their story and letting people in the community know about their business and how you might help other business owners. So, all right.
Fun.
Yeah. So, tune in and listen, and, feel free to contact Matt anytime. He's a great guy, and you'll think even more so if you watch the entire episode. All right, so we're going to jump right in. Matt, early life. Tell me about your family a little bit. What was growing up? Were you from Louisville?
No.
Okay.
Feels like it. Louisville's home now. I've been here about a little over 20 years. But I'll backtrack to growing up. From Long Island, New York. Long Island. But I don't. You notice I didn't say it that way at first. It comes back real quick when I go back and visit family and friends up there. But anyway, lived there till I was about 21 years old, and got to Louisville actually by way of North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I went to Coastal Carolina University, but originally from Long Island, New York.
Yeah. So brothers and sisters?
Yeah. I'm the youngest in the family, so same set of parents, but I was just born last. The birth years were 1960, 1962, and 1974. So 1974. So a 12-year older sister and a 14-year-older brother.
Yeah. So I always like to ask, when we're meeting somebody, we're talking about their upbringing. A lot of families, we were joking on a podcast yesterday that Destin is called South Louisville because everybody from Louisville goes to Destin, and then you got East Louisville, which is Hilton Head. And that kind of thing.
I went to Myrtle Beach and New Yorkers. Yeah, it is. They kind of similar.
And I've been to both South and East Louisville in the last 5 weeks. So I've done my part as a Louisvillian. Mm-hmm. Was there somewhere as a family growing up in Long Island that you all frequented for vacation?
We didn't do a whole bunch of trips, but we did frequent the beach. I'll tell you, and that's one thing we miss from Louisville. My wife and I joke that Louisville has just about everything. It's a great sized city, just the right size. Just missing a beach, that's all.
Okay.
If we could solve that, that'd be fantastic. So we always had the beach close by on Long Island. It's only at the widest about 15 miles wide, but 100 miles long. Mm-hmm. And we would go to the South Shore, which is the ocean beaches. We enjoyed that a lot growing up. Continued to have that in Myrtle Beach. All that went away when I came to Louisville. One thing I had to give up, though, but it's a great town otherwise.
We have good food. I mean, we're lucky that we have really strong restaurants.
It's a foodie town. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
The whiskey helps. It draws the restaurants.
Yeah, but even in Louisville, you can pretty much jump on a plane and be at a beach within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
In multiple beaches, right? You can go to kind of Virginia Beach area, you can go down kind of Panhandle, or you can be down in South Florida within a couple of hours.
I'm a big fan of Allegiant. Allegiant is fantastic. I mean, I can pretty much pay with the spare change in my pocket anywhere where I want to go.
So one day we'll do a podcast. We'll have you on to talk about traveling with Allegiant, because when I first did it with my 2 kids, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is super cheap.
Yeah.
But then I had to get the seats and get the luggage, and it wound up
probably had your 3-year-old sitting way up in the front.
I couldn't do it, and then it wound up costing me $1 million to fly with them. But anyway, that's a whole different podcast.
You could unpack the pricing structure of Allegiant for 50 minutes for sure.
You could,
for sure.
The key is to go alone. My wife will drive because she'll go down. She still has all family down in South Carolina, big family down there in the Myrtle Beach area, and it's great to have that to go back to. They're a great family, but it's a great place to go to kind of have this gravitational pull back to all the time.
Yeah.
And she'll drive, which is like incredible, because she'll drive the 700 miles, 10.5 hours, and drive straight through with the kids, and the kids travel well. And she'll go for 2 weeks at a time, sometimes maybe 3 weeks, like if she gets a long break, especially right at the beginning of a normal summertime.
Right.
And then I'll just fly out by myself. I'll be like, I can't make it, 2 or 3 weeks. I can't take that time out, but I'll just I'll fly out for maybe a few days or so. So it's single ticket Allegiant, no luggage, backpack.
Oh yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is like the Gypsy Airline.
Gypsy Airline. That is a great.
You may have to edit that out.
In full respect, and with all due respect.
Sorry, Allegiant.
This is not. I fly there too because Kristen's family, her aunt lives in Punta Gorda, and you can literally fly direct from Louisville into Punta Gorda.
Yeah.
My brother lives in Seminole, which is in Tampa near Clearwater,
and
you can fly directly into, I think it's, what is that area? It's not Fort Myers. What are they? It's the south end of where Clearwater is. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But they have another place there. So
if your flight's canceled, you basically are homeless for a week. Then you have to find another flight. There's no other flights going out.
Yeah. So all due respect, we love you, Allegiant. You know.
Yes.
All right. Well, we didn't expect to go on that. So really cool though. That's what the podcasting is all about. So let's talk a little bit. As I understand it, your dad was kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Yeah.
So, because we're going to be building into like your business and who you are, I think just knowing a little bit of that. Why don't you talk about your dad's work and his business?
Yeah, he didn't grow up like with a real wealthy family by any means. Quite the opposite. And he was a real self-made person, and he actually had a scholarship to Hofstra University as a, wait for it, basketball player.
Oh,
you see this here, right?
Your building height definitely speaks to that.
Yeah, but he wasn't
Was he
taller
the
than me,
center?
same size. Yeah, not a lot of rebounds. Outside shooter, but he's about my size, which is this is all to scale in this podcast. I just want you to know this is not. But he had a full ride. He was just a great little guy on the court. And he actually gave up that scholarship to do what he felt was the right thing to do, and I think at that time probably was to go straight to work, start providing for his family, his mother, his siblings, and all that. And he started that route. He ended up having a long career in the U.S. Postal Service as a letter carrier on Long Island, and he entrepreneurial-wise, he started a landscaping business, which may not sound like the sexiest business, but it was really, he was a smart man. He had his route that he had in Long Island, in Nassau County for a long time, decades, and then a lot of his clients were on that route. So you probably couldn't do that today in 2020. I'm sure there's all kinds of rules against it, but in that day and age, we're talking back, 70s, 80s, and 90s. He was out there, and he would literally be supervising the college age guys, including my brother, that were out there working on the landscaping clients while he's delivering the mail. And he started early, so he ended early in the day, and then he'd go out there and kind of pitch in with them. Come home 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, covered in grass clippings. Shower up, go to bed, and do the next thing early, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, next day. So that really, Long Island's expensive, property taxes, home, everything. And that really enabled him to provide really well, both in something stable with a federal job, but he was very smart to also integrate something else entrepreneurial and be able to do that too. Yeah, I didn't want to. I refused to learn any of the names of plants or trees or anything because I respected what he did, but I just did not. I knew I did not want to do that. And very intentionally did not. I can't tell you an oak tree from a palm tree. Okay.
My area of expertise in landscaping is green and not green.
Yeah.
Stuff's either green or not green.
Yeah.
That's the extent of my
knowledge.
knowledge.
Carve the weeds into a nicely shaped lawn. As long as you edge it real nice, and no matter what it is, it looks good.
Yeah. The only thing I do is I like to push mow my yard. The front back, we've got a decent little yard, and I love to do it because we got 3 little kids, and I take a long time. I usually do 2 podcasts.
Headphones, headphones,
earbuds in,
sound canceling.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, noise canceling headphones. I got an electric mower here recently, and I felt totally like I was going against everything.
I have that too.
Yeah, but
they're silent.
He was always with the 2-cycle equipment, mixing the oil and the gas, all this stuff. It's like, handcrafting everything. And then I felt like a sellout getting this. I wouldn't trade it for the world, though.
You can literally you can talk on the phone while you mow the grass.
Yeah.
Other than the sound of the grass that you mow, there's no noise.
Yeah. So that's interesting because my house I had a couple houses ago. I had this teeny tiny yard. It was like teeny. I mean, it was nothing. right?
Yeah.
I could push mow it in 15 minutes, and I bought this big, gigantic, long tractor.
So, you see, I was waiting for you to say tractor. My wife has a thing about that. When
Yeah,
people say
no, it's a lawn tractor. is what
She's
it
like,
is,
no, it's a
yeah.
lawnmower. It's not a tractor. She's like, she's from the South. She's like, a
Yeah.
tractor is a tractor.
Yeah, I know.
That's not a tractor.
According to John Deere, it is a lawn tractor.
Okay, all right. Well,
So,
then I think, all right. I can take it
But
up with my wife when I get home. Yeah.
It would take me more time to like back up in the driveway to go to the other way than it would to mow the whole stupid thing.
Any other questions about Bulletproof Finance before we go? We'll get there. We'll get there.
We've covered important. We got our landscaping knowledge.
Yeah,
So anyway,
Long Island, Allegiant. We have Allegiant down.
the Gypsy Airline. All right. So, anyways, point is, your dad was entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Sounds like qualities that, me knowing you a little bit, what you've taken away from that experience with your dad is the work ethic that you put into stuff, and I think humility, right? Like he was just like, I'm on Long Island. There's a lot of affluent people here, but I'm going to do what it takes to provide for my family in that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously that spirit of just making stuff happen. Right?
Exactly.
If he didn't make it happen, nobody was going to make it happen for him.
And hands-on. His case, literally getting his hands dirty. In my case, just being hands-on. And he was also very much a craftsman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. So let's move on to let's talk about education, because I know education has played a big role for you, and let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your education, how you looked at personal development, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll start with after graduating high school, which I didn't take high school real seriously.
Okay.
I was always really smart, but not. My thinking was, what fun is it to, study for a test and then know you're going to get a great grade. And then when I remember sitting on a bus one day and a kid telling me how much he studied for a test and he only got like a 78, and I was thinking, you mean people study for tests and they don't get hundreds? Like, that's a thing, So it's like, man, I wish I knew this sooner, because I just really didn't, just commit myself to studying and being, the straight A student. Not that it would have made all the difference in the world, but when I moved into Suffolk Community College, a large community college in Long Island, and I'm a big believer in that kind of an education, especially with all the debt that students are taking on. In the first 2 years of college, it really just, you're not taking any of your classes in your major.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe, and Mike Rowe and others have had this kind of a mindset that go about education in a smart way. Start by how you go about it.
Think about it like a business.
Yeah, exactly, and return. A return on your investment, literally. So I paid for my own way through Suffolk Community College. Actually went there 2.5 or 3 years due to a planned move to South Carolina. My mother and now stepfather at that time, Rocco Damiano. Whole other story, another podcast, but a great guy. But they had a plan to retire to South Carolina right as around the time I would have been going to my junior, senior years, and I visited Coastal Carolina, enjoyed the campus. They had a great business program there. So I was definitely on board with that. But I took a lot of credits, thinking I'd be a psychology major when I was going to the community college. There were still all the base classes, were still the foundational things were good for my undergraduate program and going towards that. A lot of extra classes figuring out something that I ended up not wanting to do, but that's part of the value of an education too.
Cool. I know, Brian, I think it'd be a good spot for you, because you have an interesting, the education and the return on investment piece you're really big on, and how, in general, people don't consider trades as much as they should, or apprenticeships and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So, you can chime in here on that, because I think it'd be interesting for you two to kind of carve out that conversation a little bit, because it is interesting. People don't think about education as a business, but it really should be thought of that way.
It is. Are you a big Mike Rowe fan? I'll start with that question.
Big what?
Mike Rowe.
Yeah, we have
jobs.
I think in the planning business that we're in, we have lots of conversations around funding for college, and we have to have that frank conversation around not everybody's built for college.
Mm-hmm.
We see my next door neighbor, for example, went to a private school. He got an art degree and has $125,000 in debt.
Got out light.
Yeah, and as a teacher, and it's like she'll never, she'll be.
All those things are great,
retired.
right? Taken separately, all those things, except for that $120,000 part.
Exactly. So I think there is a push to I think there's a push in the corporate world, and maybe you see this. Maybe you're going to talk about this in a little bit with some things you do, but I think there is a push in the corporate world to not focus as much on a college degree and more about your life experience. And even I've got a son that says he wants to be a mechanic, and I'm like, amen, brother, go after it. If that's what you want to do and you have a passion for it, go do it, but be the best mechanic you can be, right?
Yeah. Oh,
but it doesn't mean you have to go and study psychology and and humanities, whatever, and spend $100,000 in college. You can go to a trade school and get a great degree and spend a quarter of that and come out and be the best mechanic you can be.
Yeah, all those things are great, and even the art-based, like art history and all those, they're all fantastic. It's just you really have to think about your return on investment on those things. We want people to follow their passions. That's what makes the world, as rich as it is, and experiences and everything. But information's basically free today.
Yeah.
Why is college 5 times as much, as expensive as it was 20 years ago? Is it 5 times better?
It's because of the buildings they put up.
I don't think so. Yeah,
That's a whole
exactly.
different podcast.
Yeah, exactly. A whole other podcast. Exactly. I joke that people are kind of addicted to plumbing and air conditioning and things like that. I don't think those things are going away anytime soon. I think they've really caught on with the population. And a lot of the most productive countries in the world start out really with helping channel students into finding their interests, where their talent, where they're talented. Trade school is not a dirty word. Right. I remember a one-panel cartoon that I saw one time, and it was, now that you have your master's in philosophy, what will you do for your career? And everyone's like sweating. It's just a one question on the blackboard, and it's true. Philosophy is important, but arts and all those things. But trade school, it's almost like it's an insult. You use the phrase, not everyone is material, whatever that phrase was, and that can be taken as an insult. But a lot of what college has become is remedial, trying to get any shortcomings of the K through 12 system, whether private or public. So that's all stuff that people are paying for.
But I'm also a big fan of despite college and getting a college degree, I'm a big fan of promoting different higher education. I don't want to say higher education, but more educational experiences within your passion field, right? So for me, when I did get an MBA when I got out of school, but also when I got my CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner, for those that don't know. I got my Chartered Financial Consultant, which is just more experience within my passion field, right? I thought I had a lot of letters behind my name until I saw your card. And you have pretty much the entire alphabet. I don't see Q on there. So
I make sure these are metal too, so it has that sound effect. It's awesome. Great, and especially in like
only metal can hold all the designations. A simple paper card could not.
But these are important. This is part of the marketing, because I'm in a cafe and I'll make like I'm handing someone my card. I'll fumble with it. I'll drop it, and everyone will turn around. It's like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. I mean, I'm dating myself here with E.F. Hutton, dude. But you
might just take a second to kind of just briefly talk about why you chose to go and seek
certifications.
Because and you might just touch base a little bit on why that helped you getting your CPA, CFA, whatever. How that translates into how you help your clients. Because I could go all day on how I think my continuing education has helped me, with my clients. But you might, because you got a ton of them here, but you might just touch base on that.
Yeah, and it's not right for everybody. For me, in the field of finance, and I was always pure finance. I'm not an accountant, pure finance in college, and then I realized what my teacher had tried to tell me, but it took me experience to really apply it in my own life. That finance and accounting are two sides of the same coin. If you want to be a great accountant, you got to know the finance. If you're a finance person, you got to, vice versa. And things aren't as much distinguished and separate as they make it to be in education in order to focus on these disciplines. When you get out into the real world, as you know, everything is just, there's not these lines. Say, you are an accountant, stop here, now ask your finance person. It's not like that. And so I went back and I got my CPA, for example. I still didn't have enough credits for sitting for the CPA. I'd like to take it back a step, because you were talking about different pathways in education and experience and ways of getting, distinguishing yourself. And certifications is a big part of it. $125,000 for, in this case, the education you were describing for someone who was, investing to become a teacher. Doesn't cost near that to get all the letters that I have behind my name. Right, it doesn't make me special. It doesn't mean that I know more than someone else. It means that I've shown someone and there's a piece of parchment that says I know this.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there's not someone else who doesn't have that parchment that knows that or more.
Right.
But when you're dealing with people and they don't know who you are, your reputation is important. It only goes so far.
Right.
Then you have to, actually perform the work. When you're discussing with people or trying to make an impression or trying to get that foot in the door, well, if you're an unknown entity and there's another unknown entity, but this one has these certifications and this one is saying that they know these things or did these things, it just helps you distinguish yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was looking
Sure.
for early on in my career, knowing it wasn't going to be the Willy Wonka golden ticket,
Right.
but it is a lower cost way that you can go about really distinguishing yourself. There's so many people with college degrees, master's degrees.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time they come out at 28 years old, they haven't had much real work experience at all.
Right.
And Ben Sass, The Vanishing American Adult, very influential book that my wife turned me on to. She read it first, I read it, and we really implement that in our own home. And it talks about how there is this vanishing American adult. The more that we have the emphasis on education, and that is the one path that's right for everybody, and then everyone comes out 20, not a lot of people graduate in 4 years, sometimes 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Everyone else has a college degree by that point. They have a lot of debt. They realize that there's a lot of other people that have the same exact credentials they have, so now they think the answer is going on for a master's degree. Now you're 27, 28 years old, and maybe internship experience at that, sometimes cafe experience, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that aren't, real world. That's a big debt burden that's hanging over your head. For me, I really encourage, at least in the field of finance and accounting, I'll do a lot of coaching with younger people, college age and around that age. Just certifications are so important. They're self-paced. You can usually take them with having, even while you're in school. You don't necessarily have to have all the education completed. CMA is a great one, Certified Management Accountant with the Institute of Management Accountants. That's a great one to start with, and usually my out-of-the-box recommendation for an accountant or finance student. A lot of times the finance students don't want to hear that because they think like me, like I did. I'm not an accountant. Well, this is important, and this is something you can do. It's inexpensive. You can get it done before you graduate, and now you're graduating with a degree in finance and a CMA on top of it as well too. You're going to kind of shoot to the top of a lot of those lists. It's not everything, but I do think it's important, at least in that field. And there's so many certifications or other ways to distinguish yourself than something that's very time-driven in a 4-year program that people can do. But a lot of times, that direction is just missing wherever it is in the family, in school, where everyone is kind of got into this one-size-fits-all career path. And I think that could be done a lot earlier on. That's a lot of Ben Sass's arguments in The Vanishing American Adult, is hands-on, real, physical labor, to be able to appreciate the physical aspect, to build that discipline as well too, to have that pride of ownership and completion and things, and also that there's a lot of different ways to get to that distinguishing yourself in whatever field it is.
That's awesome. I mean, I feel like that was a lot of parents should listen to that 15-minute stretch that we just went down. If you want, because really what you're hoping as a parent, at least my mindset with 3 kids 6 and under, is putting them in a position to be successful in their life. That's the best legacy I could have, is that I put them in a position and oriented them appropriately to thrive based on what their skill sets are, what their desires are, and to, if that's a 4-year degree and then a master's, cool, but functionally make sure that it gets functional education and that they have time spent in other areas that back up if a 4-year degree is appropriate. So I think that's really cool. So if you are listening to this, share that with other parents.
For sure. Even the traditional 4-year path, you can get some of those dual credit classes. We're always looking into that, my wife and I, for our kids. My son's 15 right now and is going into sophomore year. There's a lot of dual credit classes. Those colleges are hungry to get the kids in the door because they want to give them that experience, and they want to be first access to that students that are thinking of Campbellsville University or U of L or Jefferson Community, or whatever it is, so that they have a higher likelihood that plus they have some credits now with that institution that may not transfer, to just anywhere. So they kind of had this vested interest, and they might give away those dual credit classes for a real discounted cost. And then there's community college for the first 2 years. So even a traditional path of any parent saying 4-year degree, and that's, that is a good viable way to go. You can get some credits done before you graduate. You can take some summer classes. Those are usually great to do as well too. And you can go to a community college or technical college your first 2 years and save a bunch. And maybe that's enough education at that point. Or maybe.
And network. Teach your kids how to network. My goodness.
LinkedIn. Free.
Free.
You can do it for free.
A lot of business owners will love to get coffee with young people. They love to give back to young people who are interested in that. So, pro tips here. A lot of pro tips. I know we did a whole podcast on Peace of Mind Radio podcast, whole episode on the true cost of an education. And it's, if you just run it and you don't think about it, my goodness, it is a giant number per child. So at any rate, all right. So let's get into your corporate career. So obviously, what we've talked a lot, people understand, I think, what you're about and what you stand for. So that's really cool. That's why we spend as much time as we do on that on this podcast. What was your start into like corporate America? And talk us a little bit about that journey and what you thought were big takeaways, big things that have kind of put you in a good position to have the business that you have, Bulletproof, today.
I'll go back to internships, really. That's my first taste. I went to Coastal Carolina University. A lot more people are familiar with it now than when I started. 1995 to 98, over the years I was there. They had this program called the Wall Fellows Program. And Craig Wall was, a local investor, business owner, and he contributed to this program. It was really special. They picked between 4 and 6 students at the time in just the business school. Now it's expanded to other disciplines too. And I was the second year of that group. Now it's been going on 20 plus years. So now I'm one of the elder statesmen when I go to these things. It's really
very distinguished. Very distinguished. Do you all have a cool lapel pin for the Wall Fellows, or?
They have all kinds of stuff now. They really turn out some fantastic students. I'm biased, of course, but being only the second year that they were selecting students for this 2-year program, junior, seniors, you don't know that it's going to be grown into what it is 20 years later, 25 years later. And it's just so cool to see that took off the way it did. And they have the right idea. They really give this, they call it like an Ivy League type of background and experience, and the things that are outside of a typical college business program. So it was about working with influential nonprofits, networking with the business community, like you were just talking about, and literally forcing the students basically into a room and say, all right, well, we're going to do this annual Christmas dinner, and we're going to have it for the people that are on the board of this Wall Fellows program. They're all very esteemed, established, wealthy, by nature of all those things. Part of the program, contributors to the university as well too, and you were going to put on this event, and that's a big part of business, real business. It's, making sure that, it's not answering multiple choice questions when you get out in the real world. It's going to be, can you talk to these people? Can you arrange an event for these people? Can you do all those soft things that aren't a part of a typical program? So they really gave us exposures to some big nonprofits, got us involved in internships. Mine was with Nations Bank in Atlanta, now Bank of America, and worked in the factoring department in Atlanta. Never would have pictured myself there, from just a few years before that, be on Long Island, and it totally opened up my eyes to a lot of different things and a whole other network of people that I wouldn't have exposure to otherwise. So internships were big. And then after graduating from Coastal Carolina with my finance degree, that's what brought me to Louisville. UPS airline headquartered here, about 20,000 employees for UPS right here in Louisville. My sister lives out here. I mentioned she's 12 years older, and she was established out here. And I came out here to visit, but also with an objective of looking at some companies that were large, GE, American Air Filter, UPS, some of these large companies. UPS being based in Atlanta, they were on my mental map of companies that I was interested in, and headquartered in Atlanta, but really the biggest physical presence in Louisville with the airline. Within a week of visiting my sister, I had a job at UPS. It wasn't that easy, but I honestly was told I was overqualified for the entry-level positions that would get my foot in the door. And I had to be an internal candidate in order to get the analyst position that I really wanted, that I was qualified for. And I had to help them figure this out, really, because it was just like, I know they see a lot of candidates and it's a revolving door of resumes and such, but I was like, so let me understand this. So I'm overqualified for the internal, for the position that I could apply for, because it was like a collections position. I'm overqualified for that. Okay. I can't get that next job that's available. I see you have several of them posted for an analyst. Those jobs have been open for a while, right? So you're having trouble getting qualified internal candidates for those jobs. I'm telling you, hey, I'm interested, and I'll take $9.02 an hour for 20 hours a week. That was it, $9. That was my big signing bonus, my big contract I signed after a 3.98 GPA and all that I put myself through. $9.02 an hour, 20 hours a week, and got the big promotion to full time 3 weeks later. But long story short, I really had to, walk them through this. Well, you're going to have a lot of turnover, right? Would you rather have the kind of turnover that's like someone internal posting for a job that they can add more value to the company, or do you want to have the kind of turnover that's more typical? Next day, aired my resume from Louisville directly to the employment center office here in Louisville, to the person who was the the head of the employment office. I might have questioned my sanity sending a next day letter from one zip code to the next zip code over, right? But I did want to get their attention, and that's honestly a lot of those things that the program taught me, and just that you really have to distinguish yourself, stand out, and that's what I had to do. Next day I got a phone call, had an interview, and got that job. That was my foot in the door. 7 months later, I think it was about 7 months later, I had that analyst job that was the next seat over from the one I was originally applying for. Yeah. So it was a 6-7 month setback, if you will, but I wouldn't call it that really. But I think young people can get hung up on, especially if they have a lot of debt. Oh, I got to get that first job that's $80,000 a year, whatever whatever that is, to be considered successful coming out of college. It happens sometimes, but in my case, it was not like that. You kind of had to be humble. You mentioned that earlier. You kind of humble yourself. And at least that was my formula for.
No, I mean that's creative. I mean, I'm in a group called Vistage, and we had one of our speakers, and he said if you're trying to get a conversation with somebody, and there's a lot of ways that makes it hard to make that happen. Mm-hmm. He said just write a letter, don't put a return address, and put private in the bottom left corner of the envelope, because then the secretary, the gatekeeper, won't open it. And then they have to open it, and it's actually kind of curious. They think it's probably something important, and then that's the way. And I thought that's the simplest thing ever, because we spend all this money on professional postcards that have all of our stuff on it and all these different things, that stationery with all. And he's like, you're really going to try to get a conversation, and I was like, that is the simplest, most no-brainer way to approach people, and then they'll read it and handwrite it. By the way,
handwritten notes. Those are because no one takes the time to do that. Yeah, I once had an employee call into a radio show here in Louisville. His name is Ray, if Ray's listening. But Ray, and it was later on in my UPS career, probably early 2000s. Late 2000s perhaps. But I handwrote him a note, and I know I'm not focusing on the things that are important when I get behind in writing those handwritten notes. I know that I'm getting caught up in myself, in the urgencies of the day, whatever it is. So I would always bring myself back to doing these handwritten notes and thanking them. I catch people doing something right. So many times it's it's oh no, here he comes again. I'm being told I'm doing something wrong. You've got to 90% of the time be telling people, catching them doing things that are right. And then the 1 in 10 times that you're giving them feedback, they're really open to listening because they know that you've been paying attention, and not, hey, good job, Isaac. That isn't specific
it's
enough.
Something serious. Like you paid attention to something that was meaningful.
Yeah, and this is how it helped me. This is how I use that information. And he called into a radio show. And the question was, it was Boss's Day, I believe, or something along, and it was like, tell us about a great experience that you had. And it was, my boss wrote me this handwritten note. By this point, it was just like, I didn't forget about it, but it was just one of these very small memories that I had in my mind. But clearly it made a big impression on him. And I know others as well, too. But, I mean, to have him go to the degree of calling a radio station, and I'd love to hear the clip if it were out there somewhere. It's been years ago. But
probably out there somewhere.
But they were like, hey, and, did he give you a bonus? Did he do that? He was like, no. He's like, he wrote me a note. He was like, that was awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and really that's what, a lot of people are after, is a recognition. Hey, notice what I did, because, emotionally you're putting a lot of investment into something, and then to just get a, hey, nice job,
Yeah, that speaker, his name was Boaz.
Yeah.
And he just had some very functional stuff like that, you know. And he said, just, you know, set a stack. Don't use business stationery. Set a stack next to wherever you drink your coffee in the morning, and just carve out. Challenge yourself to come up with 3 things that would be relevant to write a note about. And I thought that was like just common sense and interesting, and you know, at any rate, that's really cool. I love the idea of that intentional providing. It's a 9 out of 10 is going to be something you're pointing out that's positive. Because to your point, criticism is something that people are really bad at. They're not good at. They're not skilled at productive criticism, and then they don't create a platform to actually do it effectively, because it's like a quarterly review. Right now, we're going to sit here and you typed what you said about your performance. I typed what I said, and we're going to read it together.
A lot of times,
surprised that doesn't work well.
Yeah, as a fractional CFO, I get to work with a lot of companies. Sometimes there's a lack of morale in the company, and talking to, you know, the main decision maker, the president, the owner, you know, sometimes I can just hear, you know, how maybe they're talking about people. And my first question will be, well, you know, what have they done that's right? And
crickets.
You know, you kind of, well, then they kind of do this, looking up, and it's like thinking, you know, oh, all right, well, there are these things that I can recognize.
Right.
You know, thank you for not coming in drunk today. You know, that's, you know, maybe not start that low, but there are things. Hey, you know, you're reliable.
Yeah.
You know, that's you know, you come here. You know, I can always rely on you, and maybe give them one specific. You know, even if you have to start there, but that it just really is important to do.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome. So you were at UPS for a while. You worked your way
14.5 years.
You worked your way. What was your final your last position at UPS where you
last position was
probably how many roles did you have? And
oh gosh, I couldn't even count how many roles I had or how many different people I worked for or worked with. Important thing was never burn a bridge, because you never knew the next month you could be working for that person or, you know, having to work with that person. But like GE, UPS, a lot of these other larger companies, they'll move people around like every 2 years or so. Walmart does something similar too.
Yeah.
A little bit of a different process that they go through, where people actually like bid for jobs and kind of, you know. UPS, it's more of a annual people meeting. They may do it differently today, but they try to develop people. What do they need? What have they not had as an experience? Where are we trying to develop them to? And then you're told where you go, right?
Yeah.
But for me, that worked for 14.5 years, just about every 2 years. You know, the longest position I had was 5 years. Some of them were 6 months, and but moving around was a good thing.
Yeah.
Because that meant, hey, you've done what you need to do here. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it was 5 years. It just depends on, you know, what the need was. But now we're moving you here to something else, a new experience. My last role was a process improvement. I led a team as a manager of process improvement, accounting and finance professionals. So when you have a big company and they have their IT department and you have to rely on them for developing process improvements, you got to go through the prioritization process, which is just like, I'd rather have my fingernails pulled than that, because everyone is trying to prioritize their projects. Finance and accounting, you know, we were no better than anyone else, but we, you know, we had some critical things that we needed to make sure we could do, and we had the expertise of some people that were CPAs or just had this great accounting experience, and they knew databases, they knew Visual Basic, they knew all these different things. So we built our own department. Not me, it predated me, but having professionals that knew the needs of the finance and accounting, because they were finance and accounting, and then the technical expertise. And I inherited that team for the last maybe year or so, and that's been great in Bulletproof, because that's one of the things that makes me different and Bulletproof different, is that it's not just fractional CFO where we're just simply talking with banks or advising on how to do your projections and how to be more efficient and things like that. But it's about process improvements, everything down to the debits and credits, and advising and strategic things like at Farm Credit later on in my career that we'll probably get to next. But it really covers a whole wide range of aspects.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, you know, we're going to talk in detail about Bulletproof here very soon, but I could see how, I mean, you provide a lot other than just the finances. I mean, with your experience, your brain, how you think about business, how you are creative, I think you're a huge asset for any business that you serve in that capacity, because you're not just boxed into what your certifications and your business says. You know, you provide a lot more counsel other than simply like, doing that part. So I think that's really cool. You can definitely tell that you care a lot.
A lot of accountants, finance people can be very much, at home in their office with the door shut, working with the spreadsheet, right? That I'm quite the opposite. I have that skill, but that's not what sets me apart. Really being able to, talk with business leaders, to have the strategic mindset. Creativity is huge as well too.
Yeah,
curiosity. That's a big missing link that can be missing sometimes, and it really adds to.
Well, I'll speak to this because my father has an accounting firm in Lexington, so it's had it for years and years. Just sold it 2 years ago, but he's still says he's retired, but he still works all the time. But with that being said, he took a very similar approach to your philosophy. It's I think there's if you're a business owner and you're trying to find somebody that is part of your advisory team. I think sort of a fractional CFO is an important role to consider because I think sometimes there's CPAs that are basically just going to deal with the numbers that you give them for that particular year, right? That's all. And their focus is how can I take care of the right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As opposed to saying, yes, there's an impact today, but we need to consider what happens years and years and years and years down the road.
Yeah.
So I think there's a difference between going to CPA firms that are going to push the here and now and finding a good advisor type finance person that can help you, that'll sit down and actually learn what you're all about and look at the impact not only today but years and years down the road. I think that's why my dad's been so successful is he's not the guy that's just going to push the here and now. He's like, yeah, we can do that, but let's look at kind of what happens 5 years from
there's
now.
a place for all those different kinds of services. Some CPA firms will provide like bookkeeping services, for example, but it may be to enable what they do as far as filing the taxes, and at some point that may be the right fit for the company, particularly when they're getting started. They need an advice of a CPA and they're working closely with them. And then you go to the other extreme, large companies like UPS and these others that have CFOs that are of course very, very well compensated. And then in between, that's where I live, is Bulletproof Finance, where the company has been, they've had success, they're post-revenue, they're maybe $2 to $20 million, although I hesitate to put revenue limits on the companies or nonprofits that we serve. But in that range, just use 2 to 20 million in revenue. Typically, it doesn't make sense to hire on a true CFO who has Fortune 50 experience with large companies and 20 years of track record and very varied experience. But in that range, that's where I can come in, and I do fractional CFO services different than some other companies or than other CPA firms may do. For me, it's about having that experience, knowing that it's very difficult to find a trained professional with that experience, and if you can even find that person, which is difficult to do. And I had 20 years of experience trying to hire accounting people, finance people for the teams that I led, because I led leaders and teams and I would do a lot of hiring. Just that process is very difficult, to try to find someone who really knows their stuff and is a fit. And then the next hurdle is being able to afford them, because unemployment in accounting and finance is pretty darn close to 0%. Post-COVID, still very difficult to find talented people, because those people aren't as affected by all that's currently going on, as we record this. But in that range, again, 2 to 20 million revenue as an example, it doesn't make sense to hire a full-time CFO. So a lot of times they're just not aware that my service exists, and that they can have a fractional CFO as a contractor and really not have to pay, benefits, bonuses, and things like that. But they can just, for a flat rate, we can agree on deliverables, customize everything as long as it's a fit with what they need. And with my experience with large companies and best-in-class processes, there's a lot of opportunities for fit in that area. The awareness is really the challenge, and part of why I like to do these podcasts, because once they know it's an option, it becomes a viable option very quickly, and the conversation. And if they need a full-time person, I can help them with that too, just through connections and being connected in the community.
So let's talk about that real quick. So you were at UPS for 14 and a half years. And then a couple things we want to tidy up on this, and before we move into Bulletproof in great detail, is that you were at Farm Credit for 5.5, which is like the next building over virtually.
It is, on UPS Drive. I had to leave UPS to go to UPS Drive. Yeah,
so you're there, and you're a member of FEI, right?
Yeah,
president of FEI.
Yes.
All right.
What is FEI?
Yes, Financial Executives International, Louisville chapter. So yeah, I've been blessed to be the president there for 2 years, and now starting another 2-year term. So we're financial executives, CFOs, VPs of finance, controllers, treasurers, companies with revenue of 10 million or more, nonprofits, it can be smaller, but those are the basic criteria. So it goes according to those responsibilities of corporate financial executives. We're not, again, as well known with no certification tying the members together, but it is a corporate finance group.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about education and that, and like how that plays a role, and then we shadowed a lot of how experience really matters. So what you're hopefully understanding about Matt at this point is that he cares a lot about the education, about certifications, but he also cares a lot about functional experience. Matt has, 20 years basically of corporate experience at some of the best organizations, Fortune 50 companies is what he's saying. And that is kind of led you into thinking about this gap in these smaller companies that can't afford a full-time Fortune 50 executive to do that, but that you can part that out and build a business that can support that and give them the same quality, right?
Exactly.
Is that the idea?
Yeah, bring best in class processes. I've seen some of the best UPS. Gosh, I mean, their data warehouses and their processes are fantastic. Farm Credit Mid-America, their 5.5 years of VP of Finance and Treasurer, got to bring some of that expertise and combine it with what they had and really apply it. And we built some mini data warehouses that eventually others developed, IT teams built into true data warehouses, but the insights that we were able to bring there, and that was going to a large company. Farm Credit's part of almost $500 billion, $500 billion government-sponsored enterprise. And Mid-America here in Louisville is the second largest of all those associations that make up that entity. So it was great to be another part of a large, well-respected organization. So now I take that and bring it to smaller companies that could use that experience.
Yeah. So talk about why you decided to do Bulletproof. I mean, because it's, obviously you have an entrepreneurial background and you think that way, but that's still a big jump, right? You're 20 years in, you're about as marketable as you can be for corporate executive jobs that pay well, have good structures, good benefits and that. So it still must have been something to think about, making the decision to actually start a business you knew had a market for it if you could develop awareness, right? So what was it like to go through that decision process, not just for yourself, but you have a family, you have a wife and that. So what was that like?
I had the idea for years and years, but the idea came to me in the name and everything, the metal business cards, the logo, came later on, and that was a fun, interesting process for another podcast. But we, that was something that I spoke to my wife about, and I really had a clear picture of what it was I wanted to do. But I was realistic, humble, and knew that I didn't have the experience at the time, maybe 5-10 years into my UPS career. I knew at minimum I needed to have at least one more company experience, and went into financial services with Farm Credit. And that was a totally different kind of company. Really enjoyed that role. But a few years into being at Farm Credit, I realized, all right, if I wanted to, now I could do it, and I feel like I'm ready. And the business plan was all up here in my head. Had an opportunity about 5.5 years in where it was just a great point where I could say, what, I'm ready to do this thing. Let's go ahead and do it. And Melissa Frazier, again, I'm sure she's watching, but
Melissa, all the Vistage stuff is a credit to Melissa. Someone introduced me to her, and it's hard to quantify the value that what Melissa does with the group that we spend time with once a month. How much it does it gives you a moment to work on your business.
Yeah, her name just came up yesterday in another conversation. I'm connecting someone with Melissa later on today as well. But it is. But she came. We worked together through FEI. Again, a lot of roads lead back to FEI in my story. And she was a past president. She saw me working at the Heine Brothers on Blankenbaker, and
the official networking spot.
The official
in the city
networking spot.
If you want to go meet people,
we just need to do a hostile takeover, all of us business people, and just say, all right,
this is our coffee shop.
This is our coffee shop. Turn it into a WeWork, just charge people subscriptions and free coffee once you subscribe. So she saw me working there. She could tell I was not in my business garb, and I was just working on my laptop. And she said, "Hey, you on vacation?" I'm like, "Yeah, kind of. I just
from employment."
Yeah, and I was working on getting the business plan from here to here on paper, and she was like, "Oh, this is perfect." With her Vistage groups and all the consulting she does. She says, I have a prospect I'm meeting tomorrow that, I just don't have capacity right now to take on what they may need. Why don't you go with me? And if it works out, subcontract through you. And that was like day one, where I was like, oh, this is easy. This is great. Man, this is going to be like,
what's all the fuss about?
Man, I got to hire people. Of course, it wasn't that easy. That one, just kind of fell out of the sky. And Melissa was a big blessing there. Ended up working with that company for quite an extended time, and that was great. And referrals came from different avenues. BNI is a great avenue, and we worked together on some things through BNI and some others as well too. Yep. So that was kind of how things got started. But the business plan, it's kind of funny. Had that in my head for about 10 years, even down to the name and the reason why it's Bulletproof, which we'll go into next. But and then the business started to grow very quickly. COVID hit. I think that set everyone back a piece. But now, in the past few months, it's actually been where companies are saying, you know what? If I hire someone, it's going to be remote anyway.
Yep.
So why not just go straight to remote? And it's made that conversation a little easier.
Yeah.
It's a cool business model. I really. When you first, I remember I met you through BNI. You came and I was like, this is a lights out business idea. Because we work a lot with business owners and they're really good at their business, but they're not so great at like working on their business and thinking about that stuff because they have enough revenue and enough profit that they don't, unless someone brings it to their attention, they don't know. So at any rate, all right. Since you want to talk about the name, let's talk about the name. I'll ask you the question, even though you wanted it to be the next step. So,
whatever you ask me next, I'm going to answer with what I want to answer next. So that's because I know we want to make sure we. But Bulletproof, I do a lot of coaching with people, and that's because I've been coached a lot from some really wonderful people, and I want to make sure I'm continuing to get coached from people that could pour into me, and then I want to make sure I'm doing that and passing it on, and that. I would tell people, look, you got to be bulletproof in all aspects of your life. You got to be bulletproof in your faith. You got to be bulletproof in your marriage. If you're married, you have to be bulletproof in your family life. You got to be bulletproof in your career. And what that meant to me, and also to a lot of people I was coaching, was, look, you got to bulletproof your career. Live modestly within your means, never be beholden to any company or to any entity, and you always need to be ready to, you have to be able to hold your head up high, and at any point in time, if you need to just cut ties and be able to do something else, you have to be ready to do that financially, educationally, and experience-wise. And that was how I coached people. Now, for 20 years, I had a corporate, career, and then I was giving this advice, to everyone, right? And then it was like, well, what have you done, Mr. Bulletproof? Well, after 20 years, I actually walked the talk. I did it in a lot of other ways, but in a drastic way of saying, you know what? Let's just go ahead and, it was a great 5.5 years at Farm Credit, learned a lot, great people there, but I have this dream, of doing this Bulletproof finance, and I'm ready to do it. And didn't know I was going to get a client on day one. I wasn't moonlighting, didn't have clients, in the hopper, but it was just like we were just very ready to go ahead and do it. That's how the Bulletproof name came about, and that's why it's named that, and also what we espouse.
Yeah, that's cool.
So tying up the podcast, Bulletproof is essentially Matt having the Fortune 50 experience, bringing that same level of CFO services to local businesses, right, that are of size, not small businesses, but that need high quality reporting, because your type of reporting and feedback lets them make excellent decisions.
Yeah, reporting, negotiating as well, all those dealings that an owner is probably taking on, that we can go ahead and do that. I say we because it's myself, and I have other resources and capacity as well too within my firm, but I am the face. You're working with me if you are the company owner and I'm working for you.
Yeah, we do the same thing with our clients. Our job is kind of to serve as CFO for the family and to provide them advice so that they can make good decisions and feel like they have high conviction then that they know this is the right thing to do. This works for them, this works for their life, and you're doing that for business owners. So it's a really cool model. I love it. Let's tie up this with, where do you see Bulletproof in 5 years?
Right now, we are in the process of expanding. We're expanding capacity with unfortunate situation with COVID being what it is, but one thing that has been positive is that business models are really being reconsidered, and it has
Absolutely.
opened up a whole world of opportunity. And that momentum of having now those experiences working with clients, and a lot of this is word of mouth and very groundswell type of a business development model. It's not like I'm going out advertising. It's a very specific model of company that is a fit, right? That size company that the business owner is just buried and are profitable, and they know that they need this, but they just think they're out of the market. They think they're out of the game for being able to have a CFO. They probably don't need someone 40 to 60 hours a week, but a fraction of time, and being able to have an amount that's certain each month, and it's not going to be some kind of an hourly rate. We don't do it that way. It's just, what do you need, and we'll provide it, and here's the agreement, customized. So right now we are just expanding, and we have just the sky's the limit right now. So we're really excited.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on the podcast. Anybody that's listened to this in its entirety has learned a lot about Matt, but I think there's a lot of functional stuff to take away from. Even just life advice. I think we got into a lot of good things that a lot of people need to hear about. And then also how good of a business you built, how intentional you had been. A lot of people have a business idea and they're like, how can I start it tomorrow? You really were very diligent that you wanted to have a diversity of experience. That's why you needed to work at another institution. I think it's really cool. So, we always like to give people a call to action. If there's anything that you heard today that you need to talk to Matt about, it could be personal, it could be business or whatever. His contact information has been floating around. If you haven't been aware, it's been floating around throughout the episode. We'd love for you to talk to him. I can vouch for him being a fantastic guy.
LinkedIn's a great way too, by the way.
Yeah, LinkedIn's good. But you can find him on there. Reach out. There's a lot of people today during what we're going through as a society that aren't positive. They're lethargic, right? They're not breathing energy and putting life back into other people. Matt has a very outward-facing mindset on life, and I can tell you that, like, if you need a little pick-me-up, he's a good person for that, and he can help your business. So give Matt a call. And as usual, if you need, what we do, listen to us. We don't need to talk about that, but if you do need our help, please feel free to reach out. And that contact information has been floating around as well. So Matt, thank you for doing the podcast. Appreciate it. Sure. Everybody, if you like what you've listened to, please share it. Tell your friends about it. Let them listen to it. And then if you want to listen to and learn more about other business owners, Matt's the first. We're fortunate that he took the time to come and do this as the first episode. Subscribe so that you can hear all future episodes too. And get out there and network a little bit. Talk to some people. All right. Thanks for tuning in.
The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, IFP Securities, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal-related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express prior written consent. Securities offered through IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member of FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, doing business as IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Family Wealth Planning Partners are not affiliated. The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as IFP, IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal-related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors.